certainly allow for that review to take place before any services are terminated. So I certainly will ask staff to investigate to make sure that the maximum allowable time certainly is provided, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's going to take a policy change, and it's going to take a direction from you and the senior staff to send out that no client. This is not a case of, as it was sent to me, everywhere else. Hopefully, you're innocent of proven guilty. In this particular case, you're guilty. Prove your innocence. And quite frankly, the clients who are using your department need your voice, need our voices, need the support. They're the most vulnerable, quite frankly, in our province. So this needs to be a policy shift, and I would encourage you and your deputy as to move on this quickly. I can tell you the frontline people would be happy to hear it. This causes them a tremendous amount of grief. So this is one. It's called fairness. Simple, and that's all you're applying here is fairness to the system. And I think it would be something that all Nova Scotians will welcome as we move forward. The issue of overpayments, the issue of, as we spoke about earlier, about income tax refunds and that, and clawbacks that are coming. I wonder if you could give us an indication of how many of your files have been sent to a collection agency to have that money refunded, brought back.
The Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's not the policy of the Department of Community Services to send any type of overpayment collection to a collection agency. It's my understanding that we do that through Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations, and partner with Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations to do that. So it's my understanding that they would do the collection of the overpayments, and I do not at this point know the total number of cases, but I would be pleased to provide that to my honourable colleague at the earliest convenience that I find the information.
The Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would appreciate that. That would be interesting information, and I think it's been echoed in the chamber that your department may not directly send them there, but they get sent there by another department, creating some concern. And I would add, though, and I would want to be on the record about this, and I'll speak of my constituency, that the staff that you have in the front lines do everything they can to ensure that the recovery of overpayments are done in a way that is with the client's best interest at heart. Unfortunately, I've said this a number of times and I'll say it again, they will tell you, though, they are hamstrung by many of the policies of your department, and and that's why people are screaming for a review. That's why, when we were at the the forum on the face of poverty, that's, the number one issue was to have a review. And I really think it's, and everything your department may be doing may be right. But I think the review and this external review that we've talked about earlier will provide that reassurance. And if it isn't, then we know there are deficiencies and we need to improve on them. I was asked and I was invited by a frontline caseworker in your department to come and spend a day to understand the variety that is put in front of them on a day. And I would encourage you to do that. And it was just after this last election I was given the invitation, and I plan on accepting that. But I would encourage you to do that, and I think it's a challenge all members should take. We know the variety and the complexities of the different issues that we face as MLAs in our ridings, but I don't know if we understand the complexities that are faced by a caseworker in your department on the front lines of everything from, well, you can just imagine. And we call with the frustrations and saying, why can't it happen? And I think it would give us a better understanding of exactly how these clients are fitting into the policies of your department and of the government. And I think it's a challenge that all of us should take and do that. Some may have, some of the members who've been here for a while, but I think it is important for us to somehow get as close to being in someone else's shoes as we can. And, you know, I mentioned around transportation workers, our frontline people who take it all the time on the chin. Your caseworkers are in the same situation. And they take it from clients, and then they take it from us as MLAs who are after them. But they're administering your policy. You know, and the things that I hate, quite frankly, to hear from any of them is it's policy. It's probably the first thing that gets me ready to jump through the phone. So I would encourage you to do that and really do that review on policy. It's just fundamental. All the other stuff we're doing, we're spinning our wheels unless we really can reassure clients and Nova Scotians that that policy is in the best interest of all of them. My colleague from Halifax, Clayton Park, and I'm sure other people had spoken to you today around transitional housing, around women's centres, and I have spoken to you outside of the House about those issues. It is one that is, as a province, it's an issue that we need to eradicate. It's an issue that it just should not be tolerated, quite frankly, in 2006. But it's an issue that we seem to have difficulty dealing with. Part of it is funding, and there's another component to this, and it's around men's intervention programs. And it's around, I know there were some recommendations put before your department around men's intervention programs and how we deal with that. It's like every other issue, unless we deal with the root cause of it. Why their anger is there, why they feel compelled to take that out on their spouse or their children. You know, we now are going and finding a place, to secure a place to provide for that mother and her children, but we're not dealing with the issue of where he's coming from. And unless we provide that for the courts to say, you need treatment, and we can provide that treatment, we are committing that family to years and years of hell, quite frankly, if that's not unparliamentary. You know, we need to deal with that issue, and it's a complex issue. It's one that many of us, fortunately, are not faced with, but the ones who are living in fear inside of us, in their own homes and in their own communities. And we think by plucking them out and giving them a secure environment for a period of time, we've given a cooling off period. We haven't. We need to deal with that and provide that treatment. And quite frankly, if need be, we need to be able to have the courts say to men in this province who abuse their families, you need treatment, and here's where you're going to get it. And I want to know if there's a move in your department to expand that program to ensure that Nova Scotian families, Nova Scotian women and children can feel that we are doing everything we can to eradicate this problem.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And my honourable colleague raises actually my honourable colleague raises two very serious issues. And indeed, his first issue regarding going out with the caseworkers and walking a mile in their shoes, Mr. Chair, I find that a great challenge. And I referenced earlier today the fact that it certainly is my intention as we move toward recessing the legislature to get out and travel across the province and indeed visit with as many of the stakeholders and staff and facilities that come under the purview of my department that I can. And indeed, part of that would be meeting with those front line who I'm so pleased to hear the honourable member say do a good job, do a great job, because we've heard that said earlier today, and certainly it's important that staff hear that from the members of this legislature, because they indeed do a phenomenal job, and they certainly deserve all the praise they can get. So certainly I commend my honourable colleague for that, and certainly accept his challenge to make my way across the province and indeed come to know the details of my department and the details of those frontline workers personally. Mr. Chair, the second issue that my honourable colleague raised is indeed one that I have discussed with my honourable colleague prior to this estimates debate. I know my honourable colleague brings this issue forward with all sincerity and with all genuine concern and desire to ensure that those who most need our help on the front end get it. And we use the expression that an ounce of prevention is worth, pound of cure. Thank you. And that couldn't be more true, Mr. Chair, than in this case. And indeed, those programs, those intervention programs for men, we do fund to the tune of approximately close to $800,000 per year, and that's included in this year's estimates. And could we be doing more, Mr. Chair? We can always be doing more. Are we making do with the best we can with our resources, on top of the almost $4.5 million that we provide to transition houses? Then indeed, those two coupled together, hopefully, Mr. Chair, will alleviate a lot of the stresses and strains. I couldn't agree more with my honourable colleague that the last thing we want to do is to put vulnerable families at risk, Mr. Chair.
Time has expired for the member, Liberal member that was speaking. We'll now recognize the member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to start by congratulating the member for her promotion, I think, to the third largest department, and really important department, not just because of its size, but because of its function in terms of what it does. And I want to say to the minister, I've been listening very carefully to the budget's estimates, and I'm very pleased to find that the minister is very engaged in the responsibilities that she's been entrusted with, and I think she's shown some real initiative in a couple of areas, and particularly I want to congratulate the minister for saying that she has asked her staff to look at the question of educational opportunities and barriers for people in receipt of social assistance, so that they will not necessarily be faced in perpetuity with a life of poverty, because we all know education is the route to better prospects, better financial and other prospects, including better health. And this has been a policy of this government that has troubled members of the NDP caucus, and I know my colleagues in the Liberal caucus as well, greatly. And I want to say to the minister, because she has said that this is something that is of interest to her, and she's showing leadership to have this policy reviewed, that I have come to recognize that the perception is that it's people on social assistance who want to go to university or any programs that are more than 2 years that are unable to do that, when the reality is, in fact, it's much more restrictive than that. And it's not just universities and community colleges, but it's other programs. I had a constituent, a young woman, single mom, who attempted to get into and was accepted into an early childhood education program offered by St. Joseph's early childhood education school here in Metro. There's a great shortage in the field of early childhood educators. It's an area where we're going to be faced with, and the industry is already facing difficulty recruiting and retaining people in that field. Yet this young woman was unable to proceed in that program. I took a social assistance appeal on the case, and because of the department's policy, we were unable to be successful at the appeal. And I regret to say that that young woman today, 2.5 years later, is basically sitting at home on income assistance, and she's discouraged. She has lost interest in pursuing education, and it was her dream to be a child care worker and do early childhood education. And I think the crime of this situation is that I knew her probably 4 or 5 years earlier when she had returned to a learning situation with a program called Options, which is a program for people in our province who are really marginalized in terms of their abilities to get back into either learning or the labor market. And they really need upgrading. They need their GEDs, they need some life skills and all of that kind of stuff. And she had 5 years earlier taken this program, really turned her life around, and was on the path then to go further, and was cut off at the knees. And I'm sure I have other cases I can give the minister that I think really are very good grounds for a reversal of this policy. So I congratulate the minister. I think that's excellent, and I look forward, and I will participate in that review if required on any level. Mr. Chair, Premier Ham, we may recall, indicated, I think at the end of his tenure, if there was anything that he felt he would have liked to have done that he hadn't been able to do. He said that he felt that he hadn't been able to do enough for people who live in poverty, or his government hadn't been enough, hadn't done enough for people who live in poverty. And I think clearly the debate here indicates that this is an issue that many members of this House consider to be a really important issue. And I think also it's very clear that to some of us that the way to advance these issues is to have courage, to work and provide the leadership as minister in with your staff, but also with your caucus colleagues, and collaborate with members in this House to give you the kind of support and the clout that you may need in an 18-person cabinet to make those issues a higher priority on the public agenda. And I can guarantee you that if you're looking to collaborate with members of this House to advance some of those issues, you'll find a great deal of support on this side of the House in doing that. So those are my opening remarks. Now I have some very specific questions I want to ask. And I want to start with questions around disability issues. We could talk about, single moms, and we can talk about all kinds of very important issues around your department. But I specifically want to look at some of the campaign commitments that were made by your government in the election we just had to try to determine what in fact, is the substance of some of these commitments. And I want to start with the commitment of your government to establish a new Persons with Disabilities allowance that recognizes that many Nova Scotians are unable to work. So my question to you is, how many people with disabilities are you looking at who are unable to work? When will this allowance come into effect? What is the ballpark cost of providing this allowance? And I think those are 3 questions that are good to go.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to begin by thanking my honourable colleague for her voice of support. Indeed, as we move forward in the coming days, we will be looking, Mr. Chair, to find support for all sorts of ventures and programs. And this is one that is extremely important when we make reference to the post-secondary program. One that's extremely important to me, was raised by members opposite immediately upon me being appointed, and it was one that I had shared a personal story with the House earlier as to my own personal reasons for wanting to advance this, that I won't take the member's time tonight to repeat, but I am certainly more than pleased to share with her at a later time as well. So as we move forward on that, I appreciate the level of support that's been voiced here this evening, and I look forward to that level of cooperation and that expertise that indeed I very well may come seeking. Mr. Chair, particularly to the platform commitments that were made by this government and indeed by the Premier during the campaign, I can tell this honourable member, the same as I referenced earlier today, that indeed those are commitments that will be fulfilled in the days to come. They indeed were, it was made clear that those were not for this year's budget, and therefore the details of that specific program that my honourable colleague mentioned, the establishment of the new Persons with Disabilities Allowance, is something that we will be continuing to move forward and to work out the policies, the recommendations, to answer all of the questions that my honourable colleague had asked will all come with those specifics, Mr. Chair. And certainly as we develop that, I want to assure my honourable colleague that that will be done in collaboration with the stakeholders, with those experts, and with the individuals who best know the programs that are out there and the voids that exist. And we will certainly engage those experts in the process and let those details be known as soon as they become available, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Now I have to become a little better here on the floor of the House, I guess, because that's awfully vague, Mr. Speaker. For campaign promises, I would have hoped that if you're promising in your platform that you're going to do certain things, that you would have had some analysis, you would have had some idea of what it was going to cost, and you would have some idea of how many people would be impacted by that. And so I'm disappointed that the minister hasn't been able to tell me at least, how many Nova Scotians will see the benefit of having a new Persons with Disabilities Allowance. The province of Nova Scotia, we have the highest percentage of our population that have a disability. I think it's around 21%. And I have to say that of all of the people I met during the election campaign with compelling and quite often desperate situations, it was often single people with disabilities who were in the most dire of straits. Often people who live so deeply in poverty, there aren't words to describe what their situations are like. I mean, I met people who live on way less than $500 a month, a woman with terminal cancer who talked to me about how much she wanted to be able to buy ice cream and couldn't do it because it's too expensive out of her monthly food allowance. A woman who with cancer had lost a considerable amount of weight due to her illness and couldn't buy any new clothes, and said she felt embarrassed to leave her house wearing the clothing that she has, but she does not. She gets slightly more than $190 a month for food, clothing, personal effects, and so we know these situations are very serious, and people with disabilities. I attended a social policy conference in Queens a number of years ago, a summer institute that they do every year for policy people. And the Stats Canada people in their presentations, when they were looking at the trends in poverty and people falling into poverty across the country, said the most rapidly growing segment of the population that's falling into poverty are single people, particularly with disabilities and unable to work. And governments really have not done enough to adequately provide a basic income to these groups. So these are very important initiatives that the government campaigned on, but with very little substance to tell us what in fact is being planned and who will be impacted. Another commitment that the government made was to end the Department of Community Services clawback of CPP disability benefits. So I want to ask the minister, what does this refer to? What is the clawback? What is the clawback that the minister is talking about? Because in my mind, I have a number of ideas in my mind of what that might mean, but I don't know what the department means. And I want to know how many people the government is currently clawing back CPP disability benefits from. I mean, surely that information must exist. And again, when will the clawback end? If it's not going to be in this fiscal year, what's the plan to end the clawback?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And the honourable member does bring forward a very important piece of information that certainly isn't lost on me or any other member in this House, that indeed we do have some of the highest percentage of persons with disabilities, Mr. Chair, here in the province of Nova Scotia. And indeed, that presents challenges as we work with the resources and the budgets that we have available to us to ensure that we meet those needs to the best of our ability in the department, Mr. Chair. So I acknowledge my honourable colleague's reference to that and thank her for highlighting the fact that it is a challenge given the high percentage. And Mr. Chair, not to disappoint my colleague any further, and I certainly do recognize that my honourable colleague is attempting to gain some insight into some very exciting future programs and future options that we will have available. But I need to again say to my honourable colleague that the promises, the commitments in the platform were not intended for this budget year, Mr. Chair, and as we debate the estimates this evening, I can indicate to my honourable colleague that those pieces of information, as they become available, certainly will be made available to my honourable colleague, that indeed the numbers that it would entail and exactly what type of clawback we're discussing and when that will begin, etc. Those details will be coming in the future, Mr. Chair, and I'd be more than pleased to provide those to my honourable colleague when I do have that information, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Well, I mean, the minister has department staff with her, and I'm wondering if they could indicate what is the clawback now? What from CPP benefits are clawed back now? It's a very simple question.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And just for clarification, I can indicate to my honourable colleague that currently, of course, 100% of the CPP is involved in that clawback. How much, a dollar figure, if that's what she's looking for, is not available because it varies per case, Mr. Chair. And so the exact amount would vary per individual, and so that will all be taken into consideration as we move forward to eliminate it.
Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful, Mr. Speaker. And I want to ask the minister if she could tell me how many working families who don't receive IAES have extended pharmacare now under your program. And if you don't have that information, I would ask if you could undertake to provide that information, as well as what the cost of that, of those particular benefits are, because I know that currently there are working families who do qualify. I know some of them quite well, actually. And, but I'd like to get a picture of how many we're talking about.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And certainly just to clarify with my honourable colleague, she is referring, of course, to the Income Assistant Working Families Pharmacare program, which exists now, that is available for a one-year transitional period when the family is in that transition, just to get a nod of her head that that is indeed the number she's looking for. And if indeed it is the number she's looking for, I don't have that number available with me tonight, but I certainly can get that for my honourable colleague.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And the Minister is correct. That's partly what I'm looking for. But the other part of what I'm looking for is that there are people who work who have children, and they also have high drug costs in their households for whom their income is unable to support. And they would qualify for extended pharmacare of some kind. So I'm looking for both people who've been on social assistance who go back to work, and that regulation will give them pharmacare coverage. But there are people who have never been in receipt of assistance who also get extended pharmacare. So it's both of those.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I thank my honourable colleague for the clarification. It is getting late and my brain is getting a little bit fuzzy. Both of those figures certainly can be provided to the honourable member, and I will do so as soon as they're available to me, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much. I think I'm going to be sharing my time, and I will pass it along now to my colleague, the member from Dartmouth East.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to rise here this evening and talk a bit about community services. Indeed, as an MLA and the newly elected MLAs will soon find out that community services is going to be an office that they won't be able to live without in their daily operations, in their constituency offices. In fact, something is going on in the province. I don't know what it is. It's certainly happening in Dartmouth East. We have, since I've been sitting here the last 2 weeks, averaging 4 new cases a day in Dartmouth East. That's not a good thing. Although I do like to be busy, I'd prefer not to be dealing with the issues that we unfortunately face.
Reindeer
And so I'll just list some of the bigger issues that we do deal with in our office. And I think some of these issues are actually issues that, they're related to community services, but they're not actually, they're not always in your power to address. I realize that. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But food insecurities, rental issues. I know we're not going to have time to ask questions on all these, but personal allowance, home heating, electric bills, literacy issues, mental health issues, pharmacare, dental issues. So all of these things are just some of the things that an MLA will have to deal with in their daily operations in their constituency offices. And I also would be remiss if I didn't thank your staff, because I have had nothing but good dealings with the staff at Community Services. And I think my constituency assistant deserves some credit too. And I think she tries to really be informed as much as she can before she contacts. And we try and work with people to work through their situations and try and find them something better, down the road. So we try and do that with community services. It was interesting to hear earlier that indeed there's, I think, 1,100 staff altogether, and I believe 400 of them are caseworkers. So that's a lot of people dealing with a lot of issues in this province. And I guess the thing that I'll go back to is that it seems like there's more and more people coming, I know, at least in my office, and I don't know about the other MLAs, but I keep seeing more and more people. So there's something going on, I guess, economic development, healthcare issues, all these things, disability issues, they impact on people's lives. And I know a friend of mine, he always says, you're a banana peel away from being disabled. And I think we all are just a month away from being, you know, at any time we can be out of work, we can be sick and be, you know, not have our paycheck that we're used to. A lot of people don't realize they can quickly fall into debt. And one of the ways that that happens is, one of the big ways it happens, I find in my office, is through these electricity bills and home heating issues. And now without the Keep the Heat program, you know, that's another sort of issue that now I think is going to impact some people. I've actually had people last winter that actually spent, you know, the most part of the heating season in one room with an electric heater and the rest of the house sort of not usable. And I think a lot of people found the Keep the Heat program really beneficial, especially seniors in my area. So I just like to reiterate that at any time it could be one of us. It could be one of us in here that needs to phone community services. We don't know. You know, it could be a year down the road, 2 years, who knows, right? And I think it's very important to have really caring people working at community services, people that are willing to work with our clients in our constituencies, willing to listen to them with an open mind and be empathetic, and really to treat people with dignity. And I think that's so important. And what we're looking for in my constituency is not a hand out, but a hand up. And I think that's what I'd like to maybe hear you talk about this evening is, what can you do in your office to help people find their way out of having to be on community services? And keeping in mind that, you know, they may have been evicted recently, they owe back rent, they have electricity issues, and if they do happen to get a job and get back to work, they are facing, you know, they still face those bills. We try and work with people to work out a budget. So I'm just wondering if you have, you know, some kind of mechanism or resources to help people, you know, find their feet again, get back out there and improve their life. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And indeed, Mr. Chair, I want to thank my honourable colleague for the opportunity to address some of the concerns that she raised. And with her indulgence, Mr. Chair, I'm going to share a little story that was a little bit out of the mouths of babes, as we would reference. And you spoke about the ever-increasing number of cases that arrive in your office every day, and indeed in all of our offices every day. Upon learning about my new job position at Community Services, my 12-year-old didn't quite understand what Community Services was. And he understood what tourism and culture and heritage meant, but he didn't quite understand the full realm of community services. So we spent some time talking around the table about what it meant. He was quite disturbed. And he said, "Mom, what happens when those people no longer need your help? You won't have a job. You won't be a minister anymore." And I thought, what a utopia you live in, young man of 12 years of age. If you think that perhaps that could happen someday, I will share in your vision. So I assured him that I would do my very best to work myself out of a job. And so I offer that to my honourable colleague to acknowledge that as an MLA, indeed, I deal with those same issues that you do. And so now as minister, I take those responsibilities very seriously. And that's why I've taken some of the steps that I have in the first 2 weeks of being in the office to move and advance some of those topics we talked about before. The topic of the post-secondary programming for income assistant clients to be able to live with dignity and pursue a life of self-worth and self-esteem, and to be able to better provide for your family. I can't think of a better legacy to leave should I move from this department than that legacy, Mr. Chair. And so that's one avenue that I have at my disposal to be able to expand upon and to use. And Mr. Chair, the other thing that I would offer is the other program that I'm extremely happy about, and that's the PharmaCare program for children. Indeed, we need to ensure that that those 33,000 children of low-income families in Nova Scotia are indeed cared for to the best of our ability. And the PharmaCare program is one way, indeed, of doing that. Increasing the personal allowance for the third year in a row is something that I'm very pleased to be able to bring to this table today as well. $10 a month increase is certainly not the end of the increases, hopefully, that we'll see in the future, Mr. Chair, but it is another step for a third year in a row in the right direction. The shelter increase, which I know my honourable colleague coming from the metro area would be pleased to hear about, because of the challenges that go along with the rents here in the metro area in particular. So that increase in the shelter allowance. So those are some of the ways that that we're able to move forward. And I would indicate that we spend hopefully when this budget is passed, we'll have in excess of $9 million, Mr. Chair, in programs available, and in excess of $6 million in staffing to help move those programs forward. And indeed, I want to clarify, if I've misled this chamber, the 400 are simply income assistance caseworkers. In actual fact, Mr. Chair, I have over 240 child welfare workers and over 60 housing staff caseworkers. So indeed, there are hundreds more, Mr. Chair, on top of those 400 that we would consider frontline, who I'm extremely pleased, again, to be able to recognize tonight on the floor as my honourable colleague expressing her pleasure and her satisfaction with her interaction with them. It's extremely important that staff hear that from all 52 of us, and I'm thankful for my honourable colleague for offering that praise.
The honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, thank you for all those, all that information. And I can only hope that some of these new steps that the office is taking will lead to me being less busy in my office. That would be very helpful. And so I think what I'd like to do is move on to maybe a specific question or two. And one is relating around the food insecurity issue within, and I know you mentioned that the personal allowance increase went up, but has the food allowance increase gone up and or not? And how does the department come up with that amount of money? I believe there was a committee or something that looked at it, because I know it's a big issue in Dartmouth East, the issue of food. A lot of my residents that are on community services do have to go to the food bank, and I know you're only allowed to go to the food bank once a month, and you can go, I believe, on Mondays to various food banks, and you can get bread on Mondays, but the rest of the time you can't, and they don't usually carry meat. It's a lot of canned goods and this sort of thing. There's not a lot of fresh vegetables or fruit, and this is what I hear people talking about a lot in my constituency. So the churches take up a lot of the slack there, I know, and I know I've heard you say this evening that, in the perfect world, we do this and that and the other thing, but I'm just wondering how that amount of money came to being, and because I just feel like in Dartmouth East that we're really highly dependent on nonprofit organizations and these food banks, which were supposed to be, of course, in the very beginning, temporary. So it's sort of like supplementary funding. If you took it away, you couldn't live without it, but yet you don't really want it to be there. So, food banks are great and wonderful, but we all wish we didn't have to have them. So I'm just wondering if you could answer some of those inquiries. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to my honourable colleague. She raises a very, very important issue, and one that we've discussed here earlier, and certainly food security is one that certainly I, as Minister in this department, doesn't take lightly. And for the third year in a row, the personal allowance has been increased, and to now, when we get through estimates and get through this budget, the $200 a month includes funding for food and for personal needs. And of course, as this is the third year in a row that we've increased that there is no special formula that equals a certain amount for certain necessities. But as we increase that, certainly we'll move toward ensuring that we continue to stay in line, Mr. Chair, with the national food basket parameters. And indeed, just making note for my honourable colleague that indeed we have been involved with research opportunities with Dalhousie University and the Department of Health Promotion to ensure, along with the Nova Scotia Nutrition Council and the Atlantic Health Promotion Research, we've worked collaboratively to understand food security issues and to advance this very important topic amongst the different departments, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, my time this evening is up, and I'll pass along to my colleague from Shelburne.
Member for Shelburne.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Madam Minister. I want to thank the members of the House for this opportunity to speak tonight. I still am believing that this is a privilege and an honor. And I know today a number of people have give a number of testimonies, and first of all, I want to just give a little history of where I came from in my community. I was raised in Shelburne County in the early 50s and 60s. I grew up, and at times, one particular summer, my father was sick with the needed operation, and I was very young at the time, and different days there'd be Irish moths show up on our community in front of our home, and it was a number of years later that I realized that it was a community that helped put that there and maintain our income and supported our family for that time being. And it was a community project within the family, and it helped us get over that particular years. If you could fast forward a number of years later, when I went to municipal council in the late 1990s, I served 9 years at the municipal level, and believe me, if there's a reality check, and as a warden, as a councillor of my district, I took the time over the last 9 years and went to each individual applicant that was looking for a tax exemption form, and I personally was involved in that. And to me, that was a reality check in life. And also, there were times when there was individuals that basically their roof was leaking, and there was no program out there. And as the councillor for the district, I was confronted with how to get this issue solved, and tried to address all the appropriate people. And I simply went to the different churches in our community and took them there when there was a rainstorm, and it was evident that something had to be done. So community's always been there. My suggestion is that back in the mid-90s, that this service was taken away from our local municipal governments, and it was diverted over to our provincial government. And I feel personally that there is some flaws in this system. There's some people that's falling through the cracks. And maybe of all the different departments, of all the offices that's within this government, this is maybe one that the people are looking for the MLAs to have their voice and their concerns brought forward. And I think it's our responsibility to do just that. There's a number of different projects that I think that could assist people, especially in Shelburne County, in fact, across Nova Scotia. And Madam Minister, first of all, one of the things that bothers me is people that's on community services. there is a list, and I'm sure that you're very familiar with the different types of lists for emergency repairs to home repairs, people that have the leaky roofs, that needs the windows maintained. And it's been evident to me for a number of years, participating at the municipal level, that there is a great waiting period. People have waiting 3, 4, or 5 years to have this services or this maintenance done in their home. My first question to the minister is that can this list be available for myself, especially in the Tri-Counties, particularly Shelburne County? And I guess my first question is this list available?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And as my honourable colleague from Shelburne begins his time with me here on the floor this evening, I would like to welcome the honourable colleague. I've had the opportunity to know the honourable colleague from Shelburne in days gone by. I know him to be a very honourable individual who will serve his community to the best of his ability, and I welcome him here to this chamber. And he spoke about early on the rural way of life and the values that come along with that rural way of life, and indeed that he experienced himself. And I can remember on many occasions, Mr. Chair, hearing those same types of stories. My grandfather was often said that he would give anyone who came along the shirt off of his back. And indeed, it's something that I carry with me, that true value of caring for each other and caring for a community, caring within a community, is something that as Nova Scotians I think is extremely important for us to continue to instill in our children. And it's a value that I take with me to this department as minister, and I take very seriously. And I hope that it guides me, and I trust that it will guide me in the days to come. So specifically, Mr. Chair, to my honourable colleague's question regarding repairs and regarding some of the projects that we have underway, I know that in the estimate book it's indicated that there will be $14 million in the budget this year. It's an increase of over $4 million, and I'm hoping that that can provide some relief for some of the projects that my honourable colleague spoke of being on wait lists. Specifically, he asked for a list of projects that were waitlisted, and I would be more than happy to provide that to him at my earliest convenience. I don't know if it's specific to Shelburne, but it may be the Western region, and we can work through that together, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Shelburne.
Again, I thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Minister, I believe you answered my second question here already, so I think I'll move on to another question. If I can just go ahead to the last campaign, I think this is actually a story that took place during the campaign. And as you go door to door, you make different, engage in different people, especially seniors, people who are basically surviving, trying to stay in their home, and they are determined to stay there as long as possible. Many of these individuals are applicants for long-term care, but they are determined to stay in that facility or they're maintain their home as long as possible. Many of these are seniors who are maybe alone. They're also looking after maintaining their home, the repairs that goes with it, the upkeep of their property, and just to paint that scenario. And if you go, I actually had this happen, if you can go two doors down or two homes down, you come in contact with someone who is on community service. That individual is trapped. They're trapped in a cycle, and they may be a single applicant. They may be trying to put their child through school or continue their education. They're also looking for jobs. And to me, it was very clear to go through that experience. Here, if we had a program, and I suggest to the minister that they may be a good opportunity to spend that extra money that you suggested that there's available, there's $4 million I think I made note of, that this would be a prime opportunity to create a pilot project, and I hope that your department would consider that. in the time, that them two scenarios, that you have this individual that's trapped in a poverty situation, is on community service, they could be the home care giver if that person was trained, if they had access to the education, and the people right literally next door could benefit from a program like that, and you keep all them individuals in your community. So my question to the minister is, could a pilot project like that get off the ground, especially in Shelburne County?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to my honourable colleague across the way, I certainly would like to point out a few pieces of information which I know he will find beneficial. Indeed, in Nova Scotia, because of the history, the deep history of Nova Scotia, we actually have one of the highest rates of home ownership. 71% of homes in Nova Scotia, indeed, are owned. And certainly some of that is of the oldest stock of homes, certainly across the country, and that poses great challenges. You made reference specifically to seniors in their homes, and we all in this House know the challenges that face our seniors, those who deserve our respect and our assistance for all that they have given, even more, Mr. Chair. And so I'm very pleased to be able to indicate that the dollars allocated for the senior program for repairs to homes certainly is increased this year in the budget. We actually have a total of $4.5 million in the budget, with $1 million of that coming from the Department of Health. Which brings me to my honourable colleague's question regarding pilot projects. And I'm all for good ideas that can help those who are most vulnerable and those who need our help the most. And indeed, I would appreciate and look forward to the opportunity to work with the Department of Health to move forward on some of the recommendations. Of course, continuing care and home care lies within the purview of the Department of Health, so I'd be more than happy when we meet, as we will be meeting next week, to move forward some of the joint initiatives that we have with health to certainly bring some of these ideas forward to see if indeed they can be added to the programs that we have out there that are available right now, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Minister, I do think that our parents and grandparents taught us well, because the spirit of cooperation may be here tonight. And I thank you for your time. And at this time, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn over to my colleagues from Pictou East.
The Honourable Member for Pictou East.
Mr. Chair, to the Minister, first I would like to congratulate the Minister on the new portfolio, and I'm sure she is digging in there very aggressively from what I've heard so far. We've had a number of personal testimonies, and several people have mentioned that you never know when you may need help. And I remember as a young lad, my father being smashed up in the coal mine after 33 years, and my mother making a deal with a sweater company to get some sweaters, and she sold them door to door. And I'm sure some of the people in the community who purchased those sweaters did it more to help the family out than the need for a sweater. So you never know when you may need some assistance. I have a few local concerns that I would like to raise. These are ones that have come forward in the short period of time that I've been an MLA, and one of them is the back-to-school sales have begun, and some people on community services are wondering about the small allocation that is available for back-to-school supplies. And I'm wondering, I think the amount is somewhere around $100 per child, is it? I'm not exactly sure, because I've heard a couple of figures. But one is, what is the amount? How long has it been in place? And is there any intention to increase that a little bit in light of the increasing, the escalating costs of school supplies?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And to my honourable colleague across the way, thank you for the sharing of that personal story. It never hurts us, Mr. Chair, to remind ourselves that indeed we are human and that we indeed come with those very personal stories that can aid us each and every day as we go forward in our very important tasks that we do here in this chamber. And I look forward to working with my honourable colleague to advance some of the local specific concerns that he has in the days to come as I move forward in this role as Minister of Community Services. And the automatic payment that my honourable colleague is referencing, of course, is the back-to-school allocation that's available. It is available the end of July to go on the August payment for August entitlement for our clients. And I can tell my honourable colleague that it's been in existence for at least 3 years. The exact specific, thank you very much, the exact specific number of years, at least 3 years, but I'm understanding that the amount is $50 for each child, 5 to 12 years old, and $100 for each child 13 years and over. So that is an addition to, of course, the regular entitlement and of course the increases that we referenced earlier regarding to income assistance, support, and shelter increases.
The Honourable Member for Pictou East.
To the Minister, was there an intent to perhaps increase that slightly?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, it amazes me that we can still find brand new questions after 7.5 hours of this. But indeed, a brand new question. And at this point, Mr. Chair, there is no discussion in the department to increase nor to decrease that amount, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Pictou East.
Mr. Chair, another concern is the community services housing grants. They're salary-based, and there are situations where people do, in fact, go over the limit by a very slight amount. And if, in fact, the amount is, as I understand, in one case it might be $23,000 or $23,500 or something like that. And it's my understanding that on occasion, and I have one situation which I think involved about $24 over the amount, if I remember correctly. And what I am asking the Minister, has there been any consideration, rather than having an exact cutoff amount, that somebody is $3 under gets advantage of the program and someone $24 over doesn't, does it not make sense to have some kind of a sliding scale so that a person does in fact qualify for at least partial payment or partial grant?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And as I made reference in the opening statements that I provided, I was extremely pleased to have my staff here who rapidly can provide some answers. And so to one of your previous questions, Mr. Chair, to my honourable colleague, I can indicate that the program for school supplies began in the year 2000. And so that's, I believe, the final question in the trifold questions of that program. And Mr. Chair, with reference to my honourable colleague's questioning regarding the income thresholds, and Mr. Chair, I've prided myself over the last slightly more than a year in statements that I've made regarding continuing to better the federal-provincial relations that exist between this provincial House and our federal brethren, and it is indeed in that spirit that I indicate to my honourable colleague that those thresholds are set by CMHC, and indeed the federal government sets those amounts, and we live within those means. But that doesn't mean, Mr. Chair, that we can't negotiate and ask the federal government, because of those points that I made earlier about the fact that 71% of our homes are owned and that we have older homes in this province than other provinces across the country, that those factors shouldn't be used when negotiating with the federal government to have those income thresholds raised. So I certainly commit to my honourable colleague that I will raise that on every possible occasion I can with the federal government.
The honourable member for Pictou East.
Mr. Chair, to the Minister, you've just given me a little bit of ammunition in relationship to my first question. A program that has existed for 6 years. It has been in place since 2000, and we are still dealing with $50 and $100 for school supplies. I know from some experience that I have in purchasing things for my grandchildren on occasion that the prices have in fact escalated considerably in 6 years.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I am happy to answer every question as honestly as I can, and if that provides ammunition, then so be it. I'll take my shots, Mr. Chair. I do want to indicate to my honourable colleague that the fact I have is that the program began in 2000. I cannot commit on the floor of this House this evening that the rates were as they are today. So I can certainly find out that information and provide it to my honourable colleague, but I do not know if indeed the rates were that much in 2000. And certainly taking into consideration situations like the federal child benefit, the Nova Scotia child benefit, and the 3 years in a row that we've increased the personal allowance and the shelter allowance, Mr. Chair, it's never enough. We can never fully satisfy, and I don't think that my 12-year-old needs to be in any grave concern that I'm going to be able to work myself right out of a job in the near future. But we will continue to work with the resources that we've got and do the best that we can for all Nova Scotians, indeed those who need our help the most, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Pictou East.
Mr. Chair, to the Minister, I want to revert for a moment to the pharmacare issue and the election-based promises in relationship to pharmacare. I'm wondering if the Department of Community Services is working in sync with the Department of Health to identify some of the new pharmacard recipients who were in fact promised coverage during the election campaign. And I can think of one situation where there is a 65-year-old who is covered with a pharmacare card and a 62-year-old spouse who has not worked in years or may not have worked at any time in that person may have been a caregiver at home, and that 62-year-old does not have coverage. Is there an effort to identify those people that have in fact fallen through the cracks, as we've heard people say?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank my honourable colleague for bringing this very important program to the floor this evening. And indeed, not to confuse the two issues, Mr. Chair, but the pharmacare for children, Mr. Chair, is a commitment in this year's estimates that we are debating here this evening. $1 million this year, $2 million next year, and the program will be up and running October the 1st of 2006, and that provides additional relief for 33,000 children in Nova Scotia, a program that is much needed and indeed leading the way in advances forward for our families in Nova Scotia. The other program, the campaign commitment for the pharmacare for working families, is indeed a work in progress. As we know, the campaign commitments are not included in this year's budget, and therefore those details are being worked on as we speak. I know that the Department of Health and the Department of Community Services will work together jointly to move those initiatives forward and ensure that those plans and those details are available as soon as they possibly can be, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Member for Pictou East.
Mr. Chair, in exactly 1 month, 1 month since the election, I've run into a number of people who are concerned, as already mentioned, about the once-a-month use of a food bank. And I recently was dealing with one single-parent person with 3 children who in fact had already made her visit to the food bank and was in pretty desperate straits. Looking at some of the benefits going to some of the people, amounts of less than $500 per month to survive on in these days is just an impossible situation. And I'm wondering, I'm sure the department is involved in constant reviews, but certainly some of these lower levels of assistance have to be reviewed.
Honourable Minister for Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And my honourable colleague raises an issue that I'm going to have to ask for a little clarification on. The initial part, the visiting of the food banks once a month. I'm not sure if that's something that that the honourable colleague is indicating is practice or is a rule, and certainly I'm not sure of that. But I'd be happy to discuss that with them either on the floor here this evening or after. But those would certainly fall within the purview of the food bank regulators themselves, and certainly as a department, as community services, we're very pleased to be able to bring that 3rd year in a row of our increase for the income assistance up now, once we get this budget through the House, Mr. Chair, to the $200 per month. And I know, Mr. Chair, that along with the shelter allowance increase, those other programs that we've all mentioned here this evening that I won't take my honourable colleagues' time going over yet again, that all of those programs are offered with the utmost sincerity and honest effort to create that social safety net that is so important for our clients. And, Mr. Chair, would I like to be able to do more? Absolutely. Am I working with what's available right now? A $32 million increase in this department's budget is a wonderful thing for a brand new minister. And so there are lots of programs that I'll be looking to bring forward in that $32 million, and as we go forward beyond this fiscal year, to bring even more programs to the table, Mr. Chair. So with that, I'll turn it back to my honourable colleague.
Time allotment has expired. Our Chair recognizes the honourable member from Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And first of all, I want to congratulate the Minister on her appointment, and certainly look forward to working with you in the coming weeks and months. And certainly know that you have lots of challenges in that department, but I certainly appreciate and applaud your enthusiasm for the position, and obviously lots of stamina when we look at 7.5 hours here at it today. For me, I think I'll focus on the one area, perhaps today, of housing. But beforehand, I would preface my remarks with one comment that perhaps the Minister has already started to delve into a little bit. But in my 2.5 years here, I guess approaching 3 now, for me, one of the most moving and insightful events that happened here at Province House was the two-day forum on poverty. And it was one of the most, certainly, I thought, valuable, worthwhile, and great recommendations that came out of that. And if the minister hasn't, taken some time, perhaps leisurely after the next day or so, to take a look at that report, even some of the detailed accounts that are recorded in Hansard, I certainly think it would be very, very valuable. I know there were 2 or 3 presenters that are certainly etched in my memory, and certainly impact on some of the things that I strive to hopefully achieve here at Province House. One of the areas that certainly for me over the years as a teacher, and perhaps Madam Minister encountered the same thing, and that is when you had that occasion because of coaching, a missed bus or whatever, and you bring a child home from school, and you have the child tell you this is where they live, and of course you come to find out perhaps through some other means later this is not where they live, but this is where they got out because they didn't want to see, they didn't want to have you to discover the home that they actually did live in. And certainly here in my riding, rural poverty is a real thing. There's a lot of old housing stock, and we're also, however, in an area where there is population growth. Kings County is one of 5 counties in the province that is still growing. We get some in-migration due to, of course, harvesting, and people come, especially currently from Newfoundland. They stay on through that first winter and find themselves looking for housing. They will call my office. They may have gone to community services first, and of course we know that there is a considerable wait list, and I'll allude to that a little bit later on. Just, I know time is moving along here, so I just want to get a few questions in. During the election campaign, government committed to accelerating the implementation of Affordable Housing Agreement Phase 2 within the next 24 months, ensuring hundreds of Nova Scotians families that they would have access 2 years sooner. So I'm wondering, given that Phase 2 of the agreement was extended to 2008, how does 24 months now actually represent an acceleration?
The Honourable Minister for Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to my honourable colleague across the way. I thank him for the opportunity to discuss some of these issues here this evening. And indeed, Mr. Chair, in my days as an educator and having been raised in rural Nova Scotia, I didn't have occasion to take students home and have that same situation, but I do know that there were lots of opportunities, Mr. Chair, where we helped out some students do some laundry facilities at the school and provide them with some additional extra supports because we knew that they weren't getting those supports at home. And indeed, those cases are sad, and none of us want to see those cases, Mr. Chair. And indeed, in my capacity as minister, I'll certainly make sure that we move forward to ensure that those cases are minimalized. So specifically to my honourable colleague's question about Phase 2 of the housing initiative, and of course the 24 months was a commitment that was made, and indeed the monies will come forward along with the details as we know exactly where the units will be and exactly what type of units those will look like, whether indeed they'll be renovation, whether indeed they'll be rent subsidy, etc. That certainly is something that is attainable, and certainly we would envision being able to fulfill that in that 24-month.
The Honourable Member for Kings West.
Minister, for that explanation. When the provincial government signed Phase 1 of the agreement, there were media releases, of course, indicating that there'd be up to 1,500 affordable housing agreements would be created or undergo renovation. Could the minister confirm how many affordable housing units were created through Phase 1 of the agreement? I wasn't here for some of the earlier discussions today. You may have referenced this already. But according to a press release in March 2005, 300 units valued at over 20 million. So this would have 17 million left over from phase 1 and another 18 million from phase 2. So I was wondering if you could provide an update on this program.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And indeed, Phase 1 was an opportunity for the provincial government to maximize those federal dollars and be able to bring forth commitment to Nova Scotians to provide housing in a variety of manners, certainly rent subsidies, renovations, new units, etc., across the province. My honourable colleague asked specifically how many, and indeed 928 at the end of Phase 1. And I did make reference earlier today, Mr. Chair, so I will again for my honourable colleague, that the initial indication of 1,500 was at the beginning of the plan when we were trying to assess exactly whose needs would be met. And as a result of greater subsidies that were afforded to more of those lower income earners, Mr. Chair, we had to adjust that 1,500 to 928 to meet the needs of those who needed it the most, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Madam Minister, thank you for that explanation. I was also wondering, has all the money from Phase 1 been spent at this stage?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And indeed, as we move into Phase 2, we certainly have allocated the 30. I'm going to stumble now on my dollars. $37.2 million. Indeed, has been committed to the completion of those 928 units, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was wondering, Madam Minister, if you could just maybe touch upon a little bit of the overall action plan then for Phase 2. If there are some breakdowns of types of housing, et cetera, within Phase 2.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And my honourable colleague surprised me. I was ready for the next question to be how many were in my area, as I had been asked earlier. And I had my list ready to table and provide to him later. So indeed, if he'd like to see that list, I offer that in a proactive manner for him if he would like to review that list. Indeed, Mr. Chair, the $18.9 million that's committed to Phase 2 will include extra units, more units for those who need it the most, Mr. Chair, for those low-income units that we need to place across the province. The details of where those will be are not finalized at this point. Of course, we need to consult with all 4 regions of the province to decide where the greatest need is, and indeed what types of programs we will be, what types of units we will be able to provide. But it is for those most needy, the low income, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know on a couple of occasions when I was in the House today, members did offer the opportunity to come into their riding and take a look at some of the housing stock. But I'll just go, for now, I'll just ask the Minister if she is aware of the wait list in Kings County needing affordable housing. And many of these cases have already been background. They've gone through the background and assessment process of community services. So I was just wanting to know if the Minister does have a grasp on that need that is so real in Kings County.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And indeed, as I made known to all members of this House earlier, I take the responsibilities of being minister very seriously. I've accepted the challenge to go to my honourable colleague Preston's riding. My honourable colleague from Annapolis has invited me down to his riding as well, Mr. Chair, and I made a commitment that I will be working my way across the province in an effort to better understand the needs of each and every one of our 52 constituencies, because indeed it is the entire province that is my responsibility through this Phase 2 and indeed in the days to come. And the specific question my honourable colleague raised about the specific wait list in Kings County, I can indicate the same as I indicated to my honourable colleague from Shelburne, that I do not have it specific for Kings County, but I do have it for the region, and I'd be more than happy to provide that for my honourable colleague and review that with him as we continue to receive proposals for Phase 2 to see where the need most is across this province, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Kings West.
Chair, and thank you, Madam Minister, and I certainly look forward to that. And also, I guess I was going to ask about the plan for Kings County, Kings West in particular, in terms of possible projects, and certainly I will take that up with the minister at a later time. One of the things I'd like to ask the minister a question is from page 4.4 of the supplementary detail. At one point in time, the department used to break down the revenues and recoveries portion of the housing programs to amounts the department receives from other levels of government, as well as rental income. And I note this breakdown is no longer available. So I was wondering if the minister could outline the breakdown of the following estimates in terms of this fiscal year: rental and other income, recoveries from the Government of Canada, recoveries from municipalities, and whatever other recoveries are there. So just to review again, Madam Minister, the rental and other income, recoveries from the Government of Canada, recoveries from municipalities, and recoveries from other sources.
Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And as we've worked our way through the day at various occasions, staff have had immediate answers, and then we've allowed for a few moments to go by another question, and the answer has presented itself. So to my honourable colleague across the way, I can offer the approximation, but I can get him the exact figures. Indeed, it's approximately 12% of the housing total cost, which, as I understand, would be an approximate $12 million price tag, or $10.5 million price tag. And I will certainly get the details and the breakdown for my honourable colleague at the earliest possible opportunity.
Honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a very, perhaps a couple of specific questions to finish off with, and then my colleague from Annapolis will have a couple of further questions to finish off the day. There are seniors apartments in Waterville area, and I'm trying to think the name is, it's Oakview or Oak Heights, the name of these particular apartments, and while they're designated as senior, certainly you know, it becomes almost a multi-use facility at times, and I'm not sure if that's due to, again, the tremendous pressures for affordable housing, that when a unit is vacant and there is an emergency, whether families go to those particular units. And I'm just wondering perhaps what the policy is that, that allows that to occur, because I know at times it can present problems if the stays are lengthy, and there doesn't seem to be compatibility with seniors that are in the complex. So I'm just wondering what the minister's take on that is as to why it does happen.
The Honourable Minister for Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and indeed I can well imagine the challenges that would pose, Mr. Chair, and as we bring together the needs of seniors versus families and indeed children, and some of those complex cases that I'm sure that would be involved in the placement, if indeed it is for a temporary, if it's an emergency placement, etc. I have to acknowledge, Mr. Chair, that I'm not clear on whether there is a departmental policy regarding that, but I'd be more than happy to go back to staff and ask them if indeed there is a policy statement regarding that, and perhaps to get better clarification and acknowledge the challenges that presents, and indeed perhaps flag that as something that needs to be reviewed in the department.
The honourable member for Kings West.
Chair, and I didn't go into a couple of the cases involved with that because they are, somewhat lengthy, and they have the details of what they've experienced, etc. But I think the minister has grasped exactly what the circumstances are around those kinds of cases. One other specific area to my riding are the affordable housing units, Lincoln Street in Kingston, and I'm wondering about is phase 2 incorporating renovations for affordable housing, and if there are any targeted in the Kings County area.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just getting clarification. To that specific project, I don't know if indeed there are dollars being allocated there or not, but we do have additional dollars in the budget this year, in the estimates this evening, for renovations to existing housing facilities that exist. And indeed, Phase 2 will include a portion of that $18 million for increased renovations across the province, prioritized by the 4 regions. So exactly how many dollars may be going to the Western region, I'm not certain at this point, Mr. Chair, but I'd be more than happy to sit down with my honourable colleague and go over some of those priorities that he may feel are priority.
The Honourable Member for Kings West.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Chair, and certainly I thank you for those straightforward responses this evening, and likewise look forward to further discussions on some of the issues that I have. And having been and will continue to be on the Standing Committee of Community Services, certainly I'm sure there will be other issues along the way. So with that, I'll let my colleague from Annapolis, who has many of the same concerns, finish up.
The Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the housing problems in Annapolis. That's not what I'm going to talk about tonight, but I'll just put that on the record. So if we're building housings, yeah, right after long-term care. How much time is left, Mr. Chair?
10 minutes and 15 seconds.
It's almost over. I just want to take you and ask you to go to 4.3 in the estimates around the Early Childhood Development Initiative funding. When you look at administration and infrastructure, it's going up by $587,000, and program staffing is decreasing by $160,000. I'm wondering if you could just explain to me those numbers.
The Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And in these last 10 minutes, the more specific the question, the better. So I thank my honourable colleague, and I know my honourable colleague wants to hear me say yet again that I agree with one of his suggestions, because we were batting 1,000 there earlier, Mr. Chair. So I know that he's anxiously awaiting. I'll be very careful on what his questions are, so that I don't get myself in any hot water. But indeed, the questions that my honourable colleague raises about the early childhood funding is a reflection of the 10-year sustainable plan that we released in May, that indeed this is not a shortfall on one part of the department versus another, but it is a reallocation to sustain that 10-year plan of the child care plan that we introduced in May, Mr. Chair. And if the question is more specific than that, then I'll ask for clarification from my colleague.
Honourable Member for Annapolis.
First of all, I will say we agreed so much today. I was going to ask when your deputy was retiring, because I might want to apply for the job. His job's not reviewed every 2 years like mine has been so far. I'm not sure I understand your explanation. Why? I know it's over a 10-year period, but why would there be a front load on administration and infrastructure and a drop in staffing? Like if I assume, let's take today as the base, and we have a drop in staff, we wouldn't be knocking staff out, would we? We'd be increasing if we were going to try to work towards a long-term plan of 10 years.
The Honourable Minister for Community Services.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And indeed, I have received clarification as to the specific question that the member was posing. And indeed, there are many positive aspects to this 10-year child care plan. One of those I know will be of special interest or particular interest to the member from Annapolis because it pertains to the accessibility, the availability of child care options, information, etc., from an IT perspective. So it's that training availability that we will be providing for the regions across the province that we're so very pleased to be able to do for our workers and indeed for parents. Parents will be able to access forms and applications online. And the IT component of that is the project which will better service all of our families across the province. And so that's the front end amount that he's referring to. It's to better provide those services across Nova Scotia to families to better access the information that they're looking for.
The Honourable Member for Annapolis.
I guess the follow-up to that would be the staffing issue. The reduction, the drop at 160,000 staff issue.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
So, but those staff aren't. Thank you. Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Indeed, those staff that my honourable colleague is referencing were staff that were involved in the upfronting and the creating, and those staff will be reallocated as we work our way through the plan, and indeed that accounts for the differentiation, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the same page in the forecast, there is the early learning and child care programs. On phase 2, the forecasted amount is blank. There's nothing there. So does that mean that the money that was allocated by the federal government last year was not spent?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Indeed, the answer to that question is one that I posed to staff myself when looking through, wondering where that $20 million indeed had been forecasted. And that actually is money that has been banked to provide for the $130 million plan that will be sustained over the 10-year period. So we didn't lose those dollars, Mr. Chair. We banked those to include those in the 10-year sustainable plan.
The Honourable Member for Annapolis.
So I'm assuming then that the $12 million, which is still not accounted for, is still banked?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Mr. Chair, could I get clarification on that? I'm not sure what the $12 million is that...
The Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you look at the estimate, it's 20 million, and then if you go across to 06-07, the estimate is 78. So there's $12 million missing.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
10 years. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Indeed, that is an indication, Mr. Chair, of the reinvestment of that money over the 10-year sustainable plan of the child care announcement, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you look at page 4.1, 4.1 of the supplementary estimates, early child care program, there will be an infusion of $39.1 million. The agreement with the federal government is $39.2 million. Does that mean that the 39.1 is all federal money, or is there provincial money in it, or how is that divvied up there? Because the two numbers aren't the same.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And indeed, once in a while, gives me great pleasure to say that the feds have come to the table. And in this case, Mr. Chair, the 20.4 and the 18.7 indeed is all federal dollars.
Honourable member for Annapolis.
There was supposed to be another $14.3 million that was coming to the province this year as the result of an existing agreement. Does that mean that agreement has been cancelled, or is that additional money that will be coming as well? Or is the new agreement actually 39 minus the 14?
Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Okay, there are 4 agreements, Mr. Chair, that I'll list for the member, and indeed the numbers will add. The ECDI, 15 million 1, the ELCC, 8 million 7, the deferred of 4.156, and the ELCC Phase 2 of 7.8, Mr. Chair, for the total of 35.756, which I believe is the dollar figure that my honourable colleague is looking for.
The honourable member for Annapolis.
Number is actually the number in the agreement was 39.2, I think. So, and I guess what I'm wondering is the announcement then obviously was there was additional money put on existing agreements basically that had already been signed between the province and the federal government, and it's been reannounced as a new larger agreement. Would that be correct?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Indeed, I know that this is very detailed and it's getting late, but I believe, Mr. Chair, that is in subsequent years that my honourable colleague will find those dollars that he was looking for at in the last question.
The honourable member for Annapolis.
Time. 1 minute. 1 minute. Well, I'll stop at that point, Madam Minister. I want to, I want to thank you tonight and all day for putting in the service, and I look forward to seeing this department be reshaped under you. As I told you earlier, I think you're in a position actually to change the face of Nova Scotia for many Nova Scotians who actually need our support and need government support. You need to recognize, not only from the people sitting in this House, but all Nova Scotians are telling you that this department needs a major review, and I encourage you to push forward with that review, and then as we can begin to make sure that those who are trying to access your department feel that they are being dealt with in the manner to which all Nova Scotians want to be dealt with, and that is with respect and dignity. So I look forward to that, and over the next year, working towards helping implement some of those things. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll sit down. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services to offer closing her debate.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It gives me great pleasure to rise to indeed close debate. And, Mr. Chair, I hope all members here today have learned more about the Department of Community Services and the good work that is being done around the province on behalf of those who need our help. And indeed, Mr. Chair, I want to thank all members of the House who have offered their support as we move forward with some of these new initiatives that I know I can count on support from all around this House, Mr. Chair. We would also like to do more, but you have my assurances that we will deliver the programs and services laid out in this budget in the most responsible and cost-effective manner. In the year ahead, we will continue our efforts to help Nova Scotians in need. In closing debate on these estimates, Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to move Resolution E2, resolved that a sum not exceeding $748,123,000 be granted to the Lieutenant Governor to defray expenses in respect of the Department of Community Services pursuant to the estimate and the business plan of the Nova Scotia Housing Development Corporation be approved. Thank you.
Order, please. Order. Shall Resolution E2 stand? All those in favour, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. The time allotted for estimates today and supply has expired. We now recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that the committee do now rise and report progress.
The clerk reports.
That the Committee on Supply has met, made progress, begs leave to sit again.
All those in favor, please say aye. Contrary, nay. Carried. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Could I ask for the unanimous consent of the House to revert to the order of business, tabling reports, regulations, and other papers?
There's a request to revert to tabling reports, regulations, and other papers. Is it agreed? Agreed. Honourable Minister of Energy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to present to the House the Canada-Nova Scotia Offshore Petroleum Board Annual Report 0506.
The report is tabled. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to call the public bills in the Committee of the Whole. Yes, public. What? Yes, that's right. I'd like to move that the House resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole House on bills.
Is it agreed? Agreed.
Yes. Order, please. What am I doing? Order, please. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the consent of the committee, I'd like to call the bill number 34, the Maritime Conservative Reorganization Act, for the House, for the committee.
Agreed.
Shall all the clauses carry? Carried. Shall the title carry? Carried. Shall the bill carry? Carried.
See how easy that is,
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Chairman, while you're in a roll, I'm going to call Bill number 31, the Financial Measures Act. What?
Agreed.
I'm sorry, then we'll jump to another bill, okay? Okay, well, and in the spirit of hoping that it stays consistent, Mr. Chairman, I'd call Bill number 1, the Safer Communities and Neighborhoods Act.
Question?
No amendments. Shall the clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried.
Hey, John! Let's do it well, buddy!
The Honourable House Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call Bill number 10, the Protection from Illegal Drugs Act.
Bill number 10, no amendments. Shall the clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried.
Strike 3.
I'd like to call Bill number 13, Safer Needles and Healthcare Workplaces Act.
Bill number 13. It was amended. Shall all the clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried.
Number 16, I'd like to call Bill number 16, Mr. Chairman, the Police and Peace Officers Memorial Day Act.
Bill number 16. Shall the clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call Bill number 19, the Personal Information International Disclosure Protection Act.
Bill number 19, no amendments. Shall the clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried.
Mr. Chairman, to call Bill number 24, the Agricultural and Marketing Act.
Bill number 24, no amendments. Shall all the clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried.
Finish the other two. Bill number 45, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call that the Labor Standards Code Act.
Bill number 45, no amendments. Shall all the clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call Bill number 47, the House of Assembly Act.
Bill number 47, no amendments. Shall all the clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to now call Bill number 31, the Financial Measures Act, 2006.
Bill number 31. Shall clauses 1 through 31 carry? Sorry, 1 through 33. Shall clause number 34 has an amendment? The Honourable Member for Eastern Passage.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I want to move an amendment to Clause 34. Clause 34 is a clause that, just to give a brief history, last year there was a deal made at the federal level between the former Liberal government and the NDP opposition that ensured that $1.5 billion would go towards direct reduction of tuition or needs-based grants for students in Canada. And of that, a certain amount of that money was supposed to come to Nova Scotia. And in light of that, last year, Bill 207 was passed by this legislature, recognizing that and committing under the Finance Act that any money that came from that would go towards exactly what we said, what was agreed to federally. Very important piece of legislation, one that ensured that money was guaranteed to be put into tuition reduction, and for many of us, it was long overdue. Mr. Chair, what happened in the intervening period is that obviously we had a federal election, and with the federal election we got a new government, and with the new government they decided that that money shouldn't go to tuition reduction necessarily, but that they were going to put into a trust fund that would be tied to specific conditions. And what's happened is that Clause 34 of the Financial Measures Act is an attempt to say that where those conditions are such that we're not able to do what we said we would do prior, then we can't do them. And Mr. Speaker, that's a concern that our caucus has. We believe that the language in the trust fund agreement isn't as tight as the government has maybe suggested. And so we want to move an amendment that would add a Clause 1A to Section 34, which would say, where the Government of Canada specifies mandatory conditions for the use of monies received pursuant to subsection 1 that are contradictory to the purposes set out in subsection 1, the province may use the monies referred to in subsection 1 for the mandatory uses specified by the Government of Canada. Now, what that means, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, is that, and I so move, that, Mr. Chair, means that it would say that the provincial government, its hands would be tied with regard to that money where the federal government said it was mandatory to spend it. If you actually read the trust agreement, there probably aren't a lot of mandatory requirements in it, and therefore that would ensure that there would, unless it was mandatory in the trust agreement, it would allow the room for this government to ensure that that money would still go to tuition reduction and needs-based grants. And I would like to move this amendment so that we can guarantee that wherever possible, that money can continue to be used to ensure that we have affordable post-secondary education for Nova Scotians.
The amendment is in order. Any further discussion? The Honourable House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to rise briefly on the amendment to indicate the government will not be supporting the amendment. Mr. Chairman, we believe this amendment is unnecessary, that the language is exactly to the same effect of the language that exists in the bill that we introduced in the House. And moreover, Mr. Chairman, the government's position on this matter is quite clear. The government has made its position clear, which is that if we are able to pay the money out according to the conditions set out in the Provincial Finance Act, we will do so. And it is only in a situation where we cannot do so other than by breaching the terms of the trust indenture or the operating instructions that go with that trust indenture that we will pay the money out otherwise. Mr. Chairman, we wish to spend the money in the spirit of the Provincial Finance Act. We agreed to that provision in the Provincial Finance Act, and we stand behind that provision of the Provincial Finance Act. Mr. Chairman, we believe that this is an unnecessary amendment, which frankly is an attempt to change the language for no useful purpose, and therefore we oppose it.
The Honourable Member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there's no doubt that all parties in this House, specifically our party, are certainly committed to tuition and post-secondary education. During the past provincial election, I believe our party probably had the strongest platform in dealing with the issue of tuition and especially debt relief for students. Mr. Speaker, there's two options in this House when concerns are raised. You can either stand there and just holler about them, or you can look into them and try to get something done. As soon as this concern was raised, Mr. Speaker, I took the opportunity to meet with the Minister of Finance and to meet with the Premier to express our concerns over this clause. After having had the opportunity to review this, Mr. Speaker, I believe that the language that currently exists will allow the province to use this money, hopefully, towards tuition relief if possible. Now, Mr. Speaker, should it be that the trust agreement and the language would not permit the province to do so, I am now pleased to provide a written letter that I've received from the Minister of Finance indicating that once this money is received, the department will undertake to provide a legal opinion of the trust agreement and as to what the boundaries of that are. And should the trust agreement somehow not permit the province to put the money towards reduction of tuition fees for post-secondary education programs, or to support and increase access to apprenticeship training programs, or to establish a needs-based grants program for post-secondary students, we now have written agreement that that legal opinion will be provided to the Public Accounts Committee of this House prior to the government taking any action on that. And I would be pleased I'll be pleased to table that letter now, Mr. Chair, and indicate that our caucus will not be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Questions on the amendment? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Nay. Motion is lost. Shall the clause carry? Shall the... Order, please, order. Shall all the remaining clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried. Order, please. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Chair, I believe that this completes the government business in the Committee of the Whole House. I would move that the committee do now rise and report the outcome.
Clerk reports.
Chairman wishes to advise that the committee has met and the House has come to an agreement on certain bills and recommends them to the favorable consideration of the House, each without amendment, being bills numbered 34, 1, 10, 13, 16, 19, 24, 45, 47, and 31.
Ordered that these bills be read for a second time on a on a future day. You've been busy in my absence. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would now move that the House do now rise to meet on the morrow, commencing at 9 o'clock in the morning and ostensibly sitting till 5 o'clock, but I suspect that the government business will be somewhat shorter than that. The order for business tomorrow would be the completion of supply, both in the chamber and in the subcommittee, followed by which will be a vote on the budget, Appropriations Act, and third reading